Welcome once again to 720 and 720. This is John Schulman, and we took a little hiatus during the Final Four, and we're excited to get going again. No more perfect way to get going again than kind of do a part two with one of our first guests, and that's Chad Warner. Chad Warner, the head coach at Flagler, talked about mental health and mental well-being, and we're excited to have Coach Warner back. Coach Warner, welcome to 720 and 720 again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, before we, as we were talking before we started, before we get going and talking about our subject, I want to talk about what we were just talking about. As the Final Four is now completed, and you had Texas Tech and Virginia, and we were talking about ball screen, defending ball screens, and you had two different ways. Talk to me about the two different ways that we saw, because if you can't defend a ball screen, you can't play anymore. So you go your way. Which did you like better, and why?
Well, I think it may have been your tweet yesterday. You talked about being a student of the game and a purist, I think was the way you referred to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that, you made the point, really, you have to do whatever it is you feel like you are. And so for me to say which is better, I mean, Virginia's really good, and they have a guy that hard hedges that thing, and my gosh, it puts pressure on the ball handler and the decision maker, and they're really good at that. And Texas Tech, adjusted and hurt them a couple times, but then Texas Tech also has, the ability to switch it, and I think the thing that was so impressive after their switches, in my mind, I guess it was twofold. One, all those guys move well enough to guard the ball, but then two, when they did get mismatched in the post on those guards, I mean, those guards fought like crazy to keep the ball out of there. And I just, everybody wants to switch because in some ways it's easier and it's sort of an NBA thing. And, it makes sense. It takes a lot of things out of play if you can do it. But I think there's so much more to it. And just watching the way it's a credit to the way they fight, and certainly credit to the way they've been coached to fight. It was just really impressive. I mean, that was just a phenomenal game.
Well, I know, because I saw your tweet and you said, what a game, and so I knew you were really, really into that game. Look, I'm going to throw a couple ideas and thoughts there. And because we got a lot of young coaches and older coaches listening, I don't know why, if you're able to do it, I don't know why switching wouldn't be in your repertoire for defending ball screens. I don't know why it wouldn't. Virginia's probably the best defense team in the country. They hard hedged. They bumped a roller. They bumped the roll guy, and they gave up a wide slap open three. Next time they didn't, they gave up an alley. And so if the best in the country gets screwed up, because, I was always, it's very important. How many guys guard a ball screen? 5 guys guard a ball screen. 2 guys, there ain't no way. If you switch the ball screen,
right,
2 guys can guard a ball screen. And if you're dealing with, in a high school situation where you don't have 70,000 hours to work on defending ball screens, if you will just switch it, teach guys to keep the ball in front of you, teach guys how to defend in the post, whether you're fronting, however you're doing it. Who really wants to post up anymore? Oh boy, we got a great advantage, we're going to go post up. The parents will call the principal and say, that coach made my child post up during a game. He needs to be fired. and
right.
So I think switching, to me, I'm a switch guy. I don't like getting too uncomfortable and asking a big guy to get out too far and start doing two things uncomfortable. But it sounds like you're a Virginia guy, not a Texas Tech guy. That stings. That hurts me.
No, I'm I'm not. I'm not either. I do think. I mean, I agree with you. I think if you can switch it, I'll tell you this. And when I was an assistant at William and Mary, we played Kentucky, and you pregame, you're facing a really, really good team, and they hard hedge stuff, and they were aggressive and physical. This is when Coach Smith was still there. So you have your attack of how you want to face this stuff. And the first ball screen, their 5-man was Chuck Hayes, and they just switched it, and all of a sudden we were out, like, oh gosh. And they switched everything, and it was just, it was awful, and so we knew, okay, well, the ball screen ain't going to work. And, what might not have mattered, but that year at the Final Four, I think Coach Hobbs was there, and I asked him about it. He goes, we always do that against, mid-major, low-major, smaller teams, is kind of what he was saying. He goes, because our guys are athletic enough, the size differential doesn't hurt us. He goes, plus people just now they're not doing what they practice. And I think to your point, even if, you switch one time, they go into the post and they score, it just, like, are they built to do that for 30 points a game? Or however many that post player averages, are they going to be able to go that much more into it to where he's scoring that much more than he normally would? And it just left a mark in my mind of like, wow, that's a really good point. And my best teams at shorter, we switched everything. It was just, I do think it has to be personnel driven. Switching never bothered me. Well, I shouldn't say never, but switching bothered me a lot less on getting posted up than it did a big getting beat on the ball, giving up a drive. And because I just think, straight line drives create a whole mess of problems. That was more when we make a decision on how to guard it, it's usually, can our bigs keep the ball in front enough to where it won't kill us?
I am convinced. I am convinced. You show me one way you're going to guard a ball screen one way the whole game and throughout the whole season.
Right.
Well, I'm going to figure out a way to attack it. And Jeff Lebo.
So you would have beaten Tony Bennett.
Oh, absolutely, without question. I look better than Tony Bennett. I coach better than Tony Bennett. Let's get that. I don't
much calmer. Just your demeanor.
Yeah, he was so stressed out late. I saw him actually. His heart rate went from 43 to 47. But
unbelievable.
But Jeff Lebo, a very average defensive coach and a phenomenal offensive coach, had this philosophy: we're going to throw you 5 or 6 different ways. You're going to have to come off a ball screen, and we're going to trap you one time. We're going to switch. We're going to soft hedge. We're going to hard hedge. And I'm just going to tell you, I think you can disrupt people that way, and not letting them get used to doing it one way. Be average. It's just one way to do it. It's like throwing. If you're a great fastball pitcher, throw in a knuckleball, throw in a changeup. It can affect a team. Now, we are talking about stuff we're not supposed to be talking about. All right, and so we're going to completely switch gears for all the people that want to hear, and this is very important. Actually, you actually sent me an email, or I think a text or an email from a coach who was struggling with the same thing that we've all struggled with, and any coach that hasn't is a liar. And we all have to deal with, and any business leader, if you've got people under you and you're in a high pressure situation, you're dealing with your mental health and your mental well-being. And we talked an awful lot about it, earlier this year, really before the season started. And how was neutral thinking, and how was your mental health as you went through your season?
A lot in that, and to your point, and I say this not at all in any way. I've gotten multiple calls, texts, and emails just about. I think, like you said, everybody is dealing with this at some level, and it a little bit of a sidebar. I have a friend who has a really, really sick He's my best friend. His wife is sick, and we've been dealing with, cancer and going through that. And it was funny, while we were in the hospital, there were a group of us in there talking, and something came up, and I mentioned that I have had panic attacks before. And there was a gentleman in the room who lit up like he is a quiet person, and we heard that. He's like, "You struggle with panic attacks?" And, it was a crowd of people, and I was like, "Oh, absolutely." And we didn't really speak a whole lot to it right then and there. But when we got home, my wife said, "Ah, did you see that?" My point to that is, I think, and again, it's certainly more prominent right now for people to discuss mental health, and as it should be. But I think there's a comfort in this thing, too, of okay, I'm not alone. This is good. And, there's people who have dealt with this. And so it is a great thing to be talking about. And my biggest encouragement to anyone listening would be, if you're not dealing well with it, and whatever that looks like, I don't even know. I mean, we all have different degrees of what we would say is dealing well with something. That's okay. Certain people can handle things differently than we can. And, if you're struggling with it, like we said on the last one, talk about it, get help, and start to move with it. Because I do know we all face stress, and some of it is we're not trained well to deal with and manage these things, but some of it is physiological, and you're just wired a certain way that you may be starting against the grain. And that was the case for me, according to my doctors, and so anyway, to your question, I tell you, I was challenged. I was just looking at our schedule. We lost, I think, 15. I was trying to count quickly. 15 games by 10 or less. That's hard. I mean, that's hard to do. It's hard to go through. We lost 4 in overtime. Our basketball team was much, much better this year than last year. In my opinion, and in the opinion of the coaches we played against, we just didn't win. Well, as you know, when you don't win as a coach, it's awful. And so I was really, really tested, as a leader, but even in my own life, on how am I going to respond. And I'll bring this one point up, and then I'll let you prompt with some more questions. But I mean, we were battling and playing well and playing hard. And I want to say, of our 12 conference losses, 9 of them we had the lead with 5 minutes to go, tied or had the lead. So that becomes tough to talk about in the locker room, right? You may have been there. I'm sure certain coaches have, where you feel like you're saying the same thing over and over. Stick with it. We got to earn it. You're just trying to own it. Well, we lost a tough game to Augusta, who ended up winning the league and had an unbelievable year in the last minute. And I went back in the locker room, and my players were just sitting there, and they literally, John, had just played their guts out. I mean, I was so proud of the way we played, yet here we are. The result wasn't what we wanted it to be. And I remember walking back behind, kind of around into the shower area, and I just had my head down thinking, I was like, God, what am I going to say to these guys? Like, what can I say? And then it just kind of came to me, and I just looked right at them. I came out and said, guys, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. This is good for me, and this is good for you, because this is our story. We're not going to run from it. I'm not running from it. It hurts. I wish I had an answer. I know there's things I can do better, but we're going to run to it. We're going to own it, and we're not going to let it rob us of practice tomorrow. We're not going to let it rob us the next time we come out on the floor. And here's the thing. The story hasn't been written yet. It didn't magically turn around after that. It hasn't yet. But from a mental standpoint, I do think we have tried, as coaches and players, to remain neutral, to trust what we're doing, and know that our story is still being written. And, we don't deserve anything. We don't, what we deserve, you are what your record says you are. I mean, we've all heard that. all we can do, and I tell our guys this all the time, I cannot guarantee victory. I can only guarantee the right to victory. So let's work in a way that gives us a chance to win. Let's continue to recruit better players, work better things, and see what happens. And we're still right there in the midst of it. But I kind of love that, you know. I mean, it's hard, but I love it. I love the fight that we're in, and I love the guys that are fighting with us.
Well, let me. I mean, who does this? I mean, is Tony Bennett? I just love learning from other people that look similar to me with Tony Bennett. But I mean, who says and who means it when you're the only in the first and only number one seed that gets beat, and they just didn't get beat. I mean, they got beat 20 by UMBC. But who says that was a gift? It was a painful gift, but that was a gift. Who says that? Now it's easy to say that after you win the national championship, but he wasn't saying it after he won the national championship. He was saying it way before that they won. So I couple that with this right here. You know, I watched a video on the Navy SEALs. And their mindset is very simple. When something bad happens, the first thing they say is good. All right, great. We've lost 5 games in a row. Great. How are we going to deal with this? All right, we just lost our best player. We're not going to stress about it and panic about it. We're going to say, great. All right, so who's stepping up? And so if you can just change your mindset on what a gift it was to get beat, now let's learn from it. And it's the right way to do it. It's just hard getting there.
It is, and it's well. I mean, Coach Bennett is a case study on a lot of things, in my opinion. I mean, he had the quote, and this was, I think it may have been after they got in the Final Four, or maybe the game they played to get in it. But he was talking about his relationship with his father, and he just said, "Listen, I told my dad last year, I'm not going to let this game," and I'm, summarizing. So he said, "I'm not going to let this game get my priorities out of whack. I'm never going to let this game rob from me the things that matter, my faith, my family, relationships." Well, that statement right there, I mean, that needs to be like chewed on, and because it does. And you and I have had candid talks about, how the job can take, I mean, it just distorts your thinking. And now all of a sudden, it's out of whack. And his whole thing was, I'm not going to let getting to the Final Four do that. No more am I going to let getting beat by a 16 seed. And, it's really funny. Our family does the brackets like a lot of families. And I mean, I'm just terrible at it every year. I just, I just don't do well. I did pick Virginia to win it all. And the only reason was I just believed in him. I didn't watch him. I hadn't seen him play at all during the year because we're playing. I know he's a great coach, but boy, I did think this guy has his, I mean, they seemed on the same page and resilient. And sure enough, they're down 16 to Gardner-Webb in the first game. 16. I mean, think about that. That's
because Rico White's the assistant coach at Gardner-Webb, one of my guys. That's why they were down. You do what?
I figured it would somehow point back to you, and I'm glad to know it did. But think about that. And then when they came back and cut it to 6.5, and I wasn't watching, I was watching the score. I was like, this is exactly what they need. Well, then last night, somebody retweeted Kyle Guy, the number 5 for them. And on his Twitter handle, did you see this? I think it's his handle, the little picture. I think that's what the handle is. His Twitter handle is a picture of him doubled over holding his shorts while UMBC is celebrating. I mean, it's a different mindset. That was fuel to their fire. That was part of their story, but it wasn't their whole story. And I think that's what's so important if you're struggling with this stuff, even if it's not sport related. Like if you're just struggling with your life circumstance, we're so bad to write a story that's not been written yet. And I the older I get, I hope I'm learning more and more to trust that, hey, that's a false narrative. My story is still being written, and yeah, I think that's a huge part of dealing with this mental health, and your health is okay. This is just part of it. This isn't the end, and I'm going to keep moving forward.
I'm going to bring up one point real quick. As a coach, as a head coach, I mean, you said something pretty profound in there. You had no idea you even said it. You were involved in your season, and you really didn't follow Virginia's season while your season was going on, because you get consumed with your stuff. All right, and so you think when you lose 3 games in a row that everybody in America knows you've lost 3 games in a row, and everybody's talking about Chad
Right.
Warner and what a crappy coach Chad is. And so I'm assuming all the business leaders, when your stock goes down 2 points, you, honest to God, think everybody in the world is looking, oh my God, what a loser. His stock is going. We all get consumed with our own stuff, and we really don't even realize nobody else gives a rip about our own flaws. Nobody cares because they got their own stuff going on. And so I think we need to realize that everybody's consumed with their own stuff, and it's not. I used to think, and I've said this before, we'd lose a game at Chattanooga at the buzzer or whatever, and I was like, oh my God, the next day that people are going to kill me. Oh my God. Okay, so I went out in the real world and was out in Chattanooga. Half the people didn't even know Chattanooga had a game the night before. They weren't talking about it. They could have cared less. Why? Because they got their own issues.
Yeah. Well, and what is it? 90% of the time people are spending thought on themselves. I mean, there's only 10% of the time they can even think about you and everybody else. But boy, it's hard to get out of that bubble. You know, I mean, it's just.
So tell me what you did. Tell me what you did, because everybody struggles with it, and then all of a sudden you were better, but you lost a bunch of tight games. So tell me what you did to help yourself with your mental health this year, maybe different than last year or when you really struggle with it. Because like I said, I'm not just picking on you. We all struggle with it. Everybody struggles with it. It don't care if you're a coach or a business leader or a teacher at school. So what did you do? Give me some remedies so we can help some people.
Well, I will. And to that, at the end of your first year, if you've taken over a program with a history of lack of success, in some ways there's just not. There's pressure. I mean, I felt pressure, but I also sort of knew, hey, this is what it is. It's going to get better. So year 2, you're expecting to be better. And we were, but the result wasn't. So I'll be honest with you, it was harder this year. I felt more personal disappointment this year than last year, even though our record was almost the same. That being said, so I said there's a few things. One, you have to have your people that you can talk with openly and honestly. And I think you need those people in your sport, but I also think it's important that you have people out of your sport. And I don't think it has to be 20 people, but I think you need 2, 3, 4 people that you can be honest with and that you can really share your heart and soul with. And so I that's the first thing. I am really fortunate to have friends, mentors that are coaches that can reinforce me, and they know my propensity to worry and to beat myself up and to go to the dark places, so to speak. So I have those people that I'm having regular contact with, you being one of them, people that understand. And then also, I have my wife and then some people, my pastor, who's my best friend in the world, who he really doesn't care if we win a game or not. I mean, so you have those things. Again, what they are great for is reshaping the narrative that we sometimes can play out in our own head. And just from that time I spent with Trevor Mowad last summer, I cannot state how important what we're speaking is. I mean, he talks about once the negative becomes verbalized, it's 8 times stronger. I mean, that and it's going to affect the way you play. It's going to affect your performance. So, again, not having people that are pie in the sky like, oh, you'll be great, but the people that can just say, Lenny Acuff is, for me, is another one of those guys. It's like, Chad, I'm watching it. Just keep doing what you're doing and not allowing you to start thinking, well, heck, I mean, do you remember when we lost our first game of the year?
Yes,
you and I
up in Bristol.
And
I'm not even involved with your team.
Tried.
I remember it well. You're in Bristol, Tennessee. I'm trying to convince you to go get a big pal with cheese, and you refuse to go get a cheeseburger, and you really pissed me off.
Well, and that's normal. But I tell you, what was awful was that night, I'm serious now, there was a few minutes, maybe hours, where I was convinced I would never win another basketball game as a head coach. Like, listen, my son could coach a team and win some games. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to win a game. But
we've all been there. We've all been there. But I want to say this real quick. I'm at Tennessee Tech University. I'm an assistant. I'm freaking out. We're struggling a little bit. We're supposed to be good. I'm in a supper club. All right, we're out, and I'm complaining to everybody that, oh, my God, I've got the hardest job in the world. Oh, my great. I'm an assistant basketball coach at Tennessee Tech. We're struggling a little bit. We got to win. Oh, my gosh, this is life or death, all right? So that was a Sunday night supper club. The next morning, my back was messed up, all right? So the next morning, I had to go get an epidural in my lower back just to calm it down. So I went to the hospital. So I was in the hospital and looked over, and a buddy of mine who was in the supper club's a doctor. Did I know he was a doctor? No. Did I give a rip? No, because it was my life. All right. So I look over there, and my buddy is talking to a family. I guess they just had a serious diagnosis, and he's talking to a family about life or death. And did I feel like a complete buffoon and moron? Here I am whining and bitching and complaining about how tough a job I have to try to win a basketball game. And this dude's saving lives.
Right.
And I felt about 2 feet tall. And so I understand that what we're, if you had never won another game this whole year, you'd still be just fine. I just want you to know that.
Well, no doubt. And I totally agree with that and would not argue that for a second. And I even realize how selfish it is to say, I will never win another game again. Like, what about the team? But in that moment, after emotions, I allowed it to be about me, not be about my purpose, not be about our team, not be about, hey, why did we lose? Let's get better. And so, again, having people that you can talk to, and it's like, hey, man, you're writing a crazy story. Chill out with all that. And again, I know I'm just sort of telling you what works for me, what hasn't worked for me. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. I mean, so for me, there are three or four important things, and I know this isn't a religious podcast, but my faith is first and foremost the thing that anchors me. And I know, and I mean this, I know that if I don't ever win another game, it doesn't change who I am. I have not lost sight of that. And I really haven't. I'm not worried about I mean, I believe that. I know that if I lose and get fired, I'll be okay. I really, really believe that. Yet there is something in the way that I am wired that disposes me to get really worked up, especially when it comes to competitive things. I mean, I had a panic attack in a crab eating contest with an assistant coach my second year at William & Mary. Like, it was the weirdest. I know how stupid that sounds. I know how embarrassing it is to say that. Obviously, it wasn't the crab contest that I was really worried about. That's just the way it played itself out. but you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is I've never lost sight of the fact that basketball is my job and it's not life or death, but it still really, really, really matters to me. And I think that's part of neutral thinking is, oh, you know, like, I'll be honest with you, we had a real scare with my daughter mid-season. I think, you know, I'm pretty sure you and I talked about this, where for about 4 hours, I mean, we thought she had cancer because that's what we were told. And it was horrible. And it was gut-wrenching. And it was all those things. And she ended up not having it. And it was nothing. But what came out of that, you know, so many people came up to me and said, now, doesn't that put winning or losing a basketball game in perspective? And I laughed at that, and I'm like, yes, it certainly does, but I want you to know I never lost perspective of that. I've never thought winning a game was more important than my child's health. And I guess what I realized in that moment were, one, my heart broke for the people that truly are going through those issues, because their life doesn't stop. You know, like, while I knew that my daughter's health was paramount to really anything in my life at that point, I still also knew my team wasn't playing well. And I felt, does that make any, like, I just think we have to own what's going on in our lives. And sometimes, even with the best of intentions, we displace things. I don't even know if that's making sense. Maybe the coffee.
And
I mean, it's
well, I was going to say, you know, during that time when all those things are going on, and I know you're going to talk about this, but if you don't get rest and you're not sleeping, then you can't even make an educated decision, and you can't even think properly, and you're never going to win a game, and your daughter isn't going to get out of the hospital, and you just get so fatigued, and it just snowballs. And you're not thinking properly.
Well, and so exactly, and you know, I guess fatigue makes cowards of us all. It makes idiots of us all. You know, and we've talked before. Like, when I, as a coach, am missing problems, like if I'm not addressing issues, there's usually three reasons I don't. One, I just don't see it. Okay, I may not be good enough to recognize there's an issue. Two, you know, I don't want to confront it due to the consequences, good or bad. You just think, I'm going to let that ride, you know, there are bigger fish to fry. The third of which is, you know what, I'm just exhausted. I just can't deal with it. And I think with your health, you know, the one thing, the year I was out of basketball, I got in better shape than I've been in a long time. I was eating better. I was resting. I was sleeping a normal sleep night. And I did. I made a vow, like, I'm going to fight for my health and energy from now on. I knew I was going to try to get back in coaching. If I was given the opportunity, I was never going to let those things be robbed from me again, as much as the job allows. I mean, we all know, you know, you can't dictate what time you play games, and sometimes you have to recruit and you get back late. But I did this year do a better job. I wouldn't say I'm flawless in it by any means, but I protected my rest and energy better than I have before. And I do believe that helped me at least attack the voices with some clarity. And obviously I say the voices.
I understand.
You know, I say that
then give us a goal. Give young coaches and old coaches and coaches who struggle with it in business, give us a goal. How much sleep do we need to get? What time we need to get up? What do we, you know, hey man, I get up at 4 a.m. and I go to the gym and I go do this and I eat apples for every meal and I'm just the greatest. You know, you hear that and you get jealous of those people, and then I guess they go to bed.
Well, then you get deflated too, because you can't do it. I mean, you get beaten. You're like, wait.
They go to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening. I don't understand when do they sleep? And so give us some goals here. What do we need to do?
Well, I do think, you know, the more we're studying, the smarter we all get as coaches and performance people. Everybody's saying you need 8 hours of sleep a night. So you need to try to do that as a coach as well. I mean, we're dumb to think, and I get it, there's a physical element to playing that there's not to coaching. But our fatigue affects our performance too. And so I would say you need the goal of, I would say, minimum 7 hours a night. And I know there's coaches everywhere that work a lot less than that are rolling their eyes thinking, you're soft. Maybe so. The science says that's what we need. I also know there's going to be nights, maybe a string of nights, where I'm not going to be able to accomplish that. So for me, my goal, one, is to be wise about what I'm doing, how I'm spending my time, what's keeping me from resting. But then also, if I know, for instance, our travel is pretty tough here from where we are located, so we get in late. Now, the way I do it, if we get in at 3 o'clock, I'm not one of those who can just sleep till noon and let my family get up and get going. Again, I feel guilty. It's just not the way I work. I'll get up with my children and my wife and try to help and see them. But I will look for an opportunity to get an hour nap later on in the day in between. I never would have done that in the past. I just wouldn't have. I just felt way too guilty about it. I don't feel guilty about it anymore. I'm going to protect it. I try not to eat the junk I used to eat during the season. I'm okay at that. I need a little more discipline on that, but I do think what we're putting in our body probably affects that more than I would like to notice. You and I are probably similar. I can drink a Diet Coke quicker than anybody I know. I love it. But I do know that stuff affects me as well. So I'm just trying to look at the things that may affect the way I feel and think and be responsible about them, while fighting the stigma of, you're being soft or you're not working hard. Now, again, I don't want the negative narrative to take over in my heart and mind.
Let me ask you, did you think you did better this year?
I do.
So all this stuff is helping you because you're wired how you're wired. Period.
It is helping me. I'll be honest with you though, and this will resonate with a lot of people listening and with you. As I'm talking through this, there's a part of me that's like, I bet some coaches are going, yeah, but you're not winning. Because and I wish does that make sense? Like, I wish we could say, you know what, and we've turned this thing around, and my health is better.
No, I disagree.
Like, I'm not saying that worried about my reputation. I'm saying, I think, to really, I guess what I want people to know, when we were 34-3 and ranked number 1 in the country, I went to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah, so I disagree. I don't think winning and losing. I think it's probably your mental health is easier when you're winning than it is when you're losing, but there still comes pressure with that too. So that to me doesn't mean I'm just going to.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't want people that may be struggling a little bit because they don't have great habits and they're just working their tail off to be like, no, nothing's wrong with me. I have to work at this level if I want to win. Does that make sense?
Listen, Buzz Williams is pretty good, right? I watched them practice, and as soon as they got done with practice, he went to their gym and in the weight room, and he worked out for like the next hour. And if you can't stay healthy, you cannot do anything for your team and for your family. It don't mean anything because at the end of the day, and I want everybody to understand this, when you're on your deathbed, no one's going to give a rip how many games you won at Flagler. I hate to tell you that. Nobody cares. Nobody cares how many rings you've won. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that you had 14 all-conference players in your. Nobody gives a rip. And so at the end of the day, all we're doing is trying to do our best and trying to. I would challenge everybody to, instead of trying to win a basketball game, try to make an impact on somebody's life. And then if you'll do that, if you'll impact somebody's life, if you impact all 14 of your players' lives, I will promise you'll win more games, and it'll feel better. But you get caught in that moment. We got to win. You don't have to do nothing. You don't even got to pay taxes. You don't have to do it. And so just do what's right and stop focusing on the result and how people are looking at you, because those same people that you think are looking at you, they think you're looking at them.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. And, it again, the story's still being written for all of us. When you slip, when you have a moment. I had one a month before our season. I had been doing great. And all of a sudden, we had a meeting and started talking about what we were going to do for marketing and how we started talking about each game. I left the meeting. I called my wife. I was like, I am not doing well. Like, it came out of nowhere. And obviously, I kind of knew, like, okay, we're talking about the actual season and expectations and people in the gym. But it kind of got going down the wrong road. And having people around me, again, that are familiar with who I am, that know the way I am, it was helpful. And I didn't beat myself up. I'm like, oh, my gosh, I've lost the battle with anxiety again. I'm like, I didn't. I just thought, okay, this is real. You need to be careful, and you need to make sure you're on the treadmill 5 days a week. And you need to make sure that you're not putting so much caffeine in your body that you can't think straight, and some of those things for me. And you need to, so again, like, not to use the same language over and over, but don't let stories write themselves that aren't real. Own what's happening, and don't let it hide. And that's the one response I do think of the people that sent text or called or emailed, was this whole idea of, like, okay, you can't let one event take over the next 10. Own it and move on. And I just think, as a coach, there's so many, and as a businessman, as a father, as a husband, there's so many decisions you're making. Some of them aren't going to be the right ones. Recognize them, own them, move on. And, what a battle every day for me. Like, ooh, screwed that one up. That's embarrassing. But that's a whole lot better for my health than just beating myself up over and over. And again, I go back to Tony Bennett. That loss could have goes one or two ways to UMBC.
It could.
Can you imagine the pressure that?
No, it could have crushed him. It could have crushed his whole career. It could have ended his career. Instead, he's sitting on top of the profession. We talked earlier. I actually did a podcast with Charlton Young, and it was interesting. We did it right after they got beat at home by Duke, and they didn't just take one loss right there. That one loss turned into three, because they were thinking about that one loss. Right. It's funny. I remember being in your place. You just lost your first game of the year, and you're going, we're not going to win another game. I used to tell myself, we're not going to win another game. And then I'd tell myself, I was like, at least do yourself a favor. At least play the games first. Give yourself a chance to win a game before you say you can't win any more games. At least play the game. Because there's 350 games, there's going to be 350 winners and 350 losers. And it used to do me good to watch Duke and Carolina play, because one of those good teams is taking an L. Everybody takes L's, and it's just part of it.
Well, and again, you and I, we've talked about this before too, this strays a little bit from mental health, but just as coaches, there may not be a bigger group of hypocrites. If our players start thinking, like, I'm not going to make a shot again, we are, what are you talking like? You're soft. You're in, like, well, we do it all the time, and so it's probably good to remember we all have these same human tendencies, and our jobs to be pouring life into each other, into our team. And again, speaking truth. Truth is the best way, in my opinion, to deal with mental health issues. And that doesn't mean you don't, like, I'll never forget when the doctor, and again, I don't say this, there are people who have it much worse than I do. And so when I even bring up the idea of being imbalanced chemically, I'm not for 1 second trying to paint a picture of me. But I'll never forget the first time he was explaining to me how, like, my we're all wired to fight or flight, and my fight jumps up quickly, and the body's made to come back down and rest. Mine doesn't do that well, which is why I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up wide awake in the middle of the night, worried about hitting downs underneath and all those things. And he's like, and I did. I got on some medicine. And he's like, this is going to help bring your system back into balance. And I was like, wait, I've got an imbalance? It's like, he's like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? For a second, it freaked me out. Like, oh, no. But to me, it's like, well, do you wear contacts? It just is what it is. And so truth, like, what's the truth? And so, hey, you know what? We lost because that other team was a lot better than us. Or, we're not very good because you haven't recruited a good player. That's better than, oh, my gosh, I'm going to foreclose on my house. Well, I've done that. You've gone from one loss to losing your house, right?
Absolutely. But, but going back to the guy that has missed 12 in a row, what do you tell that kid? Hey, man, you may not make another 3 the rest of the year. I don't think you're going to say that to him. You're going to say, hey, man, keep shooting. You're a great shooter. Keep shooting. Next one's going down. All right.
And even beyond that, what we're trying to get to, which is even different from what you said, is the next shot has no relation.
None. I did.
They are completely separate
I did a
events.
study on free throw shooting, actually in a class a long time ago. It's the same thing with a putt. When you make a free throw or miss a free throw, that next free throw, it has nothing to do with the previous free throw. That's why you do your pre-shot routine. I did a study on pre-shot routines. But so it's the same. But you got to be positive. And you're positive with that kid who's struggling. Find somebody to be positive in your life, to step into your life and say, hey, man, you're fine. You're playing good. It ain't no big deal. Everybody loses. Bang, bang. Get around positive people. Not people blow smoke up your tail. I'm just talking about positive people that will be real and say, listen, man, this is what it is. You're doing fine. Relax, man. Everybody struggles a little bit, and be positive. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and it is the one thing, it's the one thing that I have told our players and our staff, the one thing we will protect harder than anything in this program is getting rid of the negative. And again, that's not saying it's all pie in the sky. But if you are going to be negative about everything and bring other people down, I can assure you won't be here. I believe it's that important. And again, none of these are my ideas. That's sort of the way I'm wired. I've always been a glass half full, but it took an even more real turn for me last summer at the University of Georgia, watching Kirby talk about that and seeing Trevor Mowad talk about it, and the way and Coach Saban, these things that they've done. Well, it kind of starts to make sense. And I told Trevor Mowad before I left, I said, listen, I don't have the resources, obviously, that these guys have here. What would you tell a guy struggling to build a small Division II school? What are things? He said the number one thing is you've got to rid that program with negativity.
Right.
And I want to do that, but I also want to make sure that that's not coming from me, the negativity, and yeah.
Well, listen, you've been. Hey, we'll do a part 3, and then we'll do a part 4, and because this is real stuff, and we can actually, it ain't X and an O, but it's way more important than an X and an O. Is that everybody struggles with this, and if they don't, they're liars, and everybody's got. Surely to God, Coach K had fears at one time, and Cal, listen, they all have fears and different fears. And Coach, if Cal doesn't win a national championship at Kentucky, he's a loser. If you don't win 14 games, you're a loser. We all have different expectations for ourselves. Yeah. But I would say this, if you're a glass half empty type of guy, then find people around you that will fill that glass up to make it a little bit, at least go over the halfway point, getting up to full, because we all need that. We all need that, and our spouses are there for us, and our families are there for us. And I'd come back from a game, and Amy Schulman would say, God, you're the worst shooting team in the world. I was like, no, I need positive stuff. But go ahead, finish this
Right.
up and go ahead.
Well, pressure is good. Like, that's the thing. Like, if we can be honest with emotions and feelings and reality, pressure is good. It makes us perform better. It's good for deadlines. Paralysis is what's so bad, and so, like, I do believe there is a balance between all this stuff again, I know the way I am. I get nervous. I do. I feel a pressure about an individual workout in the afternoon. It's just the way I am. I don't want to not go out there and do a good job. But that can quickly get thrown out of kilter, to where I can remember when I was first the head coach, we weren't practicing well, and I called Coach Herrick, who I'd worked for, my Coach Weir, and we just had the worst practice. It had to have been the worst practice in the history of college basketball. I've lost my team, he goes, it's just practice. It's just practice. And for whatever reason, he'd won a national championship, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, I'm all right. He's like, your team's gonna have bows, in his voice, and it's just so. But pressure's okay. It's just let's not be crazy.
Let's not be crazy about it. And also, if you got my personality and yours, then you know that you have limitations. Just to be honest, you got limitations. So find ways to fight through it. And it sounds like you're fighting through it. If it's medication, if it's rest, if it's diet, if it's talking to your preacher,
all the above.
So do it all to protect yourself and protect your life. And Chad Warner, we are rooting for you. We love you. And you're going to. Don't worry, we got part 3, we got part 4 coming up, and you don't look like Tony Bennett, but I think you need to start. You dress like him, because I watched you play this year. In the game that I saw you play, you won, and everything was good, and you were a good coach that night, and you ate good pizza on the way home. Hey, appreciate your time once again.
Love you, man. Appreciate you.
You're awesome.
Guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Chad.
you so
Take care,
much.
buddy.